The movie starts with a montage of fight scenes from various movies. Colt, a stunt double, monologues, praising stuntmen for their hard work in making action scenes possible. He briefly delves into a romance with a colleague before returning to his narration, giving credit to stuntmen. The job isn't always easy, with actors often being condescending, but Colt loves what he does. A bonus is working alongside Jodie, his ideal woman. On set, Colt and Jodie use walkie-talkies to stay connected. Before every scene, Colt jokes with her. But one day, after their usual banter, Colt's stunt goes wrong. He falls from a high point, and Jodie's and others' screams wake him from unconsciousness. 18 months later, Colt is off the grid. He's turned down all stunt jobs to focus on recovery and has cut off Jodie completely. He now works at a restaurant, taking orders and parking cars. When recognized by colleagues or actors, he firmly states that his stunt days are over. Gail, a producer, tracks Colt down and calls him, urging him to return to stunt work. Colt calmly rejects her offer. However, at the mention of Jodie, Colt's resolve falters. Despite avoiding her for months, his feelings remain strong. Learning that Jodie is now a director and he'd be working with her reignites his motivation. Colt drives his famed sports car impressively, drawing applause from onlookers. Colt Seavers, the stuntman, is back. On his first job back, after completing the first scene, Colt looks for Jodie to say something, but is intercepted by Dan, the stunt director, who briefs him on the next stunt. It's a risky one, and Colt hesitates, unsure about taking it on after his fall. Dan encourages him, though Colt remains wary. Jodie is busy on set, giving instructions to her crew and ensuring everything aligns with her vision for the movie, which blends love, adventure, and sci-fi. Dan brings Colt to the beach, where Jodie is shooting. Colt tries to stall, claiming the sand isn't suitable for a car drift, but Dan sees through him and motivates him. Colt pushes forward, driven by the chance to impress Jodie again. As the scene begins, Colt drives a car with cameras rolling. Still rusty, he crashes into a camera but continues. The stunt requires him to flip the car, and he executes it perfectly. When the scene ends, Jodie learns Colt is the stuntman and is furious with Dan for involving him without her approval. Colt is surprised that Jodie didn't know he was part of the project. Despite her initial anger, Jodie is happy to see Colt. Though she doesn't openly show it, Colt, for his part, is just glad to be near her again. Colt tries to flatter Jodie, but his words make her ears itch. Jodie can't listen any longer. She walks up to Dan, insisting that Colt leave the set. Dan, however, is confident that no one else is available for the challenging stunts Colt is about to perform. The scene begins, and Colt has to be set on fire. After the first take, Jodie announces a second take, and Colt mildly revolts. Jodie uses the public address system to tell a story similar to Colt's, a story of someone shutting out those who care about them. It's clear Jodie still nurses the pain of being cut off by Colt. He gets the message and proceeds with the second take. Jodie continues the movie script, narrating how a man abandoned her love interest, leaving her to question if what they shared was just a fling. While it may not be obvious to the cast and crew, Colt sees the story as about him and how he messed up. Jodie opts to redo the scene, citing technical problems. It begins to feel like payback, toying with Colt's emotions. Since Jodie has been sending messages covertly, Colt decides to do the same. He admits he was wrong, using the same storyline to plead for a second chance. Jodie gets the message but makes it clear she will only consider it after he's set on fire again for another take. That evening, Colt approaches Gail, demanding to know why she brought him onto the set despite Jodie's objections. Gail reveals her real motive. Tom, the lead actor, is missing, and she needs Colt to find him. Colt doesn't understand why Gail expects him to act as a detective. Gail insists that Colt's resilience as a stuntman makes him the right person for the job. Besides, if Jodie learns about Tom's disappearance, it could throw her off and jeopardize the project. For Jodie's sake, Colt considers the mission. He's also eager to find a way to make amends for his past mistakes. Gail gives him the details and a strict 48-hour deadline. 48 hours to save Jodie's directorial debut, and 48 hours to possibly win her back. Sitting in his car, Colt reminisces about the good times with Jodie. The kisses, the laughs, the dances, and the joy of working together. His thoughts are interrupted when Jodie approaches him. She's done with her attitude, but Colt, still remorseful, struggles to find the right words. Jodie expresses relief that he's okay, but supposes that whatever they shared wasn't real, perhaps not even close to a fling. They agree to remain professional on set. As Jodie steps out of the car, Colt turns on the stereo, and the music reminds her of the good times they once shared. Colt gains access to Tom's house and finds it empty. While trying to settle in, Tom's girlfriend Iggy suddenly charges at him with a sword. They fight briefly until Colt realizes the sword is blunt, a prop used in movies, and Iggy is just playing around. Colt explains his mission, and Iggy acknowledges that Tom has been missing for a while. She then provides Colt with a list of Tom's possible locations. Colt visits a club and finds Mr. Dune, who forces him to sit and have a drink. The drink is laced with a substance, and as soon as Colt takes it, he starts hallucinating. Despite the hallucinations, Colt overpowers Dune's men in a fight. Realizing he's outmatched, Dune flees, but Colt pursues him, even standing in front of Dune's moving car to stop him. Dune confesses that Tom's chief security officer paid him to spike Colt's drink. With this revelation, Colt becomes convinced that Tom is in serious trouble. Colt goes to the hotel where Tom is staying and encounters Jody, who is concerned about his disheveled appearance. Colt brushes it off, but Jody remains upset that he shut her out after his accident. Before Colt can explain, Gale arrives and pulls Jody away. Colt resumes his search for Tom using the information Dune provided. He forcefully gains access to an apartment. While inside, Jody calls to discuss a potential script change. Their conversation turns into a disagreement before Colt hangs up and continues his search. In the apartment, Colt discovers a lifeless body in an ice-filled bathtub. Horrified, he runs to his car and alerts Gale. Despite Gale's warning, Colt reports the incident to the patrol police, who confront him for parking violations. When they return to the room, the body is gone. The next day, on set, Colt tries to talk to Jody about the previous night, but she shifts the focus to the movie. She proposes a significant twist in the script and wants Colt to take on a bigger role. Colt accepts with pride and performs perfectly. Afterward, Jody invites Colt to go out with her. Gale interrupts, handing Colt a flight ticket and advising him to leave the set. He explains that the situation with Tom has spiraled, and Colt should distance himself from the trouble, even if it means skipping Jody's karaoke offer. Colt instead meets Alma, who claims to have information about Tom's whereabouts. Alma demands a director's credit for Jody's project in exchange for the details. She also has Tom's phone in her possession. Before Colt can negotiate, hitmen appear, using tasers on both him and Alma. The hitmen abduct Alma, but Colt, along with Alma's dog, gives chase. While Colt battles to rescue Alma from the hitmen, Gale informs Jody that he sent Colt away because she initially opposed him as the stuntman. Jody is stunned that Colt left without saying anything and goes to her karaoke session alone, singing a heartbreak song. Colt manages to save Alma after a brutal fight, though he is left bruised and battered. Rushing to find Jody, Colt discovers she isn't there. Dan introduces her to Venti, who might help unlock Tom's phone. Dan accompanies Colt to Tom's house, where they find the password to the phone. Searching through the media files, they uncover a video of Tom partying with Henry, his stunt double. The video reveals Tom accidentally hurting Henry. Colt realizes he wasn't imagining things. There was a lifeless body at the hotel, and it was Henry. In a flash news report, there's an announcement that Henry has passed on, and the prime suspect is Colt. He was last seen in the room before Henry's body was discovered. In that vein, the hitmen locate Colt. Dan fights alongside Colt as they prevent the hitmen from getting Tom's phone. Colt gets overpowered as Dan escapes. The phone is still out of reach for the opposing teams. Colt is apprehended and taken to Tom's hideout. He's tied to a chair and tortured while Tom has a fiery chat with him. Tom admits to ending Henry's life and wants Colt to take the fall, citing himself as a global brand that can't be involved in such madness. Gale's plan has gone through. She meets Jody and explains the situation, painting Colt as the actual suspect. Jody knows Colt and insists that he has to be innocent. Gale thinks it's the job of the police to determine that. Tom reveals the biggest secret that gets Colt really sad and vengeful. The previous accident that made him shut everyone out was orchestrated by Tom. It was Tom who hit the button that made him land badly. Tom reveals that it was a carefully laid plan for Gale to get Colt out of his hideout so he could take the fall for Henry's demise. This infuriates Colt. Being a survivor, he finds a way to escape, leading Tom's men to chase him with a boat. Colt does what he does best. He lets his boat run into another boat, causing an explosion. Tom's men conclude that Colt is no more. The news spreads everywhere that the famous stuntman is gone. Gale immediately phones Jody and informs her, keeping up with her plan. While Tom's men search for Dan, Colt sneaks up on Jody in the studio. Jody puts up a fight as Colt enters, disguised as an alien. Jody is glad Colt is alive. Colt is very concerned about Jody's movie, but Jody just wants to see him. They begin kissing when Gale knocks on Jody's door. Colt quickly goes into hiding to avoid being seen. Gale is sympathetic towards Jody. Jody plays along, as Colt has already revealed that Gale is part of Tom's plans. Both of them devise a plan to corner Tom and get him to confess, exonerating Colt. Jody buys the idea. After Tom's supposed last scene, she sets him up for another. This surprises Tom and Gale, but Jody gives them a good enough reason. The set is ready. Tom is made to enter a car and feign a car fight. Colt then enters from the passenger side. Jody's perfect end to the movie is a stunt where a car drives over a cliff and lands on the other side. Colt makes Tom confess to murdering Henry. He also points to Gale as an accomplice in setting Colt up. Jody had earlier placed a microphone on Tom to record his confession. After their plan pans out, Colt takes Tom on the eventful ride over the cliff. On landing, Tom passes out, although unhurt. Gale finds the sound man and forcefully retrieves the recording of Tom's confession. Jody confronts her, but Gale tries to justify her actions, explaining her point of view. While Dan and his men fight off Tom's men, Gale escapes with Tom using a helicopter. Colt, always willing to do the impossible, finds a way to hang on to the helicopter. Mid-air, the three of them fight until Colt gets hold of the tape. Like the stuntman that he is, he lets himself fall off the helicopter and lands on an inflatable bed set up by Dan. Jody's movie goes on to become an award-winning film. They get an established actor to take Tom's place while Colt continues as a stuntman. With Gale's situation, Alma becomes the producer. Colt ends up getting back his love interest, this time for life.